It is my distinct pleasure to introduce one of our champions, Mike Principalli. Mike is safety manager at Volker Stevin Contracting, who were the winners, as Seth just said, of the 2021 Buddy Up Trophy for their outstanding participation in the campaign. And he's also been a mainstay on the Buddy Up Advisory Committee, which helps guide the campaign, and has championed Buddy Up in other groups as well, such as Airdrie Dads. You might recognize him from our Buddy Up webinar as well, which we released during last year's campaign. So welcome, Mike, and I see you're on camera there. How are you doing?
Doing well, thanks, Blaze.
Good stuff. So yeah, we're pleased to have you, and we hope to learn from your experience in bringing this campaign to your workplace. With that, I will get right into questions for our audience. Maybe a quick numbers update here. It looks like we're sitting at 80 people. So again, thank you for joining us. And I'd like to remind you that if you have any questions that have come up throughout the presentation, or that you'd like to ask Mike specifically, please send those to our moderator, Jenna, through the chat function. And we would be pleased to get to as many as time allows. So Mike, for those who don't know, tell me a little bit about Volker Stevin Contracting and what it is you do.
Yeah, we're a large civil construction company here based out of Calgary. So we basically do deep utility installation, so your sewer, sewage, water, storm. Then we go up to road building, paving. We produce that, and then everything else from project managing to asphalt production. And just kind of the one-stop shop for the civil side of construction. One of the higher profile jobs we did was the rehabilitation on 17th Avenue here in Calgary a few years ago. So
great, thank you. Now, can you tell me a little bit, maybe as a generalization, what is sort of the male culture within this industry like? And maybe how does that apply to?
Yeah, we out of the 500, when we're at peak season, out of the 500 people that we employ, a large proponent of that, like I would say it's in the high 90s of that is male. We do have some gals out in the field and some gals in the office here, but the large proponent of that is is male. And you know, just out in that, obviously stereotypically we have your typical construction worker would be the hard and gruff male that's not supposed to be talking about their feelings and what have you. Obviously, as a society, we're seeing that change. I think it's a difficult subject to speak about when you're talking about suicide prevention. Not a lot of people want to, you know, even entertain the idea, but I think you know, it's starting to become more and more prevalent. At the end of the day, we're a company made up of people, and people have their lives outside of work. And unfortunately, suicide plays a large role for a lot of people and back at home. So it's definitely something that we definitely wanted to support.
Absolutely, yeah. And so I'm wondering if you can maybe tell our audience today a little bit about how you guys got involved and sort of what prompted your involvement through Volker Stevin.
Yeah, you know, typically these days you don't often get through a meeting without mentioning COVID, but that was one of the things that kind of started this off. I sat through a webinar that Akash had put on, and what can I say? He's a good salesman about the Buddy Up program. So it was a situation where I listened to a Buddy Up through the Calgary Safety or Construction Association, excuse me. And Akash had done a really good job of bringing up some interesting facts. And obviously people were going through quite a bit of big change, living in isolation at home, and then basically even at work, obviously. So we really wanted to get ahead of it and start learning about the Buddy Up campaign to help our workers get through the tough times that everybody was going through. And then unfortunately, we actually had an employee that took his own life in mid 2000, which really brought this to the forefront for us. So it was one of those situations where it really, you know, it was a worker that had been with us, and it wasn't the person that you would think or whatever that you would profile, much like what Seth was saying, you know, people with their head in their hands and all that stuff. It was one of the things that we'd often mention. It was a lot like Robin Williams, the jokester of the group and all that stuff. So when that happened, it really got us focused on trying to make sure that all of our employees were taking care of themselves and watching out for each other, because we spend a lot of long hours working with each other, spend more time with our families than, or more time with them than our families.
Thank you for sharing that, Mike. And that is definitely something we're very passionate about with this campaign. Is so many people come to us after a tragedy at work or at home, things like that, and we really want to empower people to get ahead of that in their workforces and their family lives, and be able to have those conversations and recognize those warning signs. And so, yeah, we really appreciate you sharing that. We appreciate your involvement, and I'm wondering if you can maybe tell us, after that happened, how did you actually sort of practically implement it within the company?
Yeah, I think the easiest thing is just to get signed up as a champion. And it really, the Center for Suicide Prevention has done a really excellent job working with us to provide us the material, signing up as the champion, and then getting the swag and getting the word out to the employees. We obviously saw some pictures in there that we had the hard hat stickers. I think the real big one for us was the air fresheners. We have over 150 trucks, big and small, throughout the whole, operating throughout the Calgary area. And it's just an identifier for people to recognize that the truck is a safe space for people to talk to their coworker, to, just being out in there. And it just sends a reminder and gives notice that, there's just to check in on somebody, and if somebody wants to open up to somebody, there's that opportunity available to them.
Yeah, 100%. And we were very pleased to see those air fresheners put to good use in all of your fleet vehicles, and great to see those pictures. Yeah, so definitely some ideas there for people to take away. That's been a big thing for Volker 7, is the air fresheners. Maybe tell me a little bit, what has been sort of the impact you've seen? Do you have any particular stories, or just maybe broad strokes of what the campaign has been able to do?
Yeah, we, like most companies, we have an employee assistance program. But that's, the resources. I think it's more so with the Buddy Up campaign, and it's about creating that awareness. I think oftentimes just having guys being available or aware that there is help and there is connections that we can make. I think we've seen a lot of success stories. I've heard on more than one occasion now. One that really speaks volumes to the impact that Buddy Up has had is, we've had a worker, again, a construction worker, walk up to a supervisor that, that's been around for 20 plus years. And he says, I'm not in a good space. I'm not doing well. And I'm not happy living right now. And, making that connection with those guys is a really big breakthrough, especially in our industry. And it's really impactful hearing those stories. Not that you want to deal with that all the time, because you want everybody to be in a good spot, but I don't know if we would have been able to get that addressed and get him connected to the right people if we didn't have this campaign. So it was, and like I said, we've had more than a few occasions, not that we have a high number of it, but we've, it's maybe have saved a life, right? So it's really important to get involved with the people and just create that awareness that there is your employee assistance programs, there is the Buddy Up campaign, to create that awareness to help guys. And it's really simple. I think that's the biggest thing for our guys, is just listening and sticking to your role, and just helping and creating that awareness for the guys to watch out, and being obviously approachable if somebody does come up to you and reaches out in that way.
Yeah, wow, that is a powerful story. I know for me personally, when I came out to film my interview with you last year for the webinar, and I also was able to film one of your coworkers, and I was quite struck by, we were out on a construction site. These are guys 100% who most people would go, yeah, they're probably pretty rough and not likely to engage with something like this. And yet he was able to sort of very eloquently actually talk about how it had impacted a lot of guys on their site. So I do really appreciate that. Maybe our final question here before we move into a bit of Q&A, because I do see that there are questions coming in, and thank you for those. Feel free to continue asking. It's just sort of, it can seem very daunting to implement something. It can be daunting to take it maybe to your manager or to your leadership or things like that. And yet I do, again, want to emphasize that with BuddyUp, one of our big things here is that there is no minimum expectation. That we want you to come on board, whether it's a lot or a little. It's not some sort of all or nothing scenario. And so I'm wondering, Mike, if you can maybe just give some really good practical tips, learnings on maybe a few things that people could get started with, at least. Maybe that small first step that maybe leads to something bigger, maybe it doesn't, but some way to sort of get the ball rolling.
Yeah, absolutely. We started small, like the stickers and air fresheners. Again, were a big target for us just to get the word out to our employees. And again, obviously the first step is signing up as a champion, and then starting small, getting the swag, getting the message out. I think is really important to the employees, because it's a statement, buddy up. Well, what does that mean? Well, obviously it's a pretty serious subject. But then also the next step from that, I think, is getting employee involvement and having small little focus groups. We actually had some individuals from the various groups that we have within the company kind of just pop in with, much like you would have on a safety committee, and just provide their input. And we had the folks from the Center for Suicide Prevention come in and do a seminar for us, or a webinar, I think it was at that time. It was really good. And even just the positive feedback, unsolicited, from the employees coming back to us, saying, yeah, I'm really happy you guys are doing this. I had a brother-in-law take his life, or what have you. It's really important to get that message across. And, we're always, for us in our line of work, we're always very concerned about people's safety and not getting injured and what have you at work. But it's also really important to take care of them from a health standpoint, and a mental health standpoint is really important. But back to your question, I think it's just taking it in small steps. Like you said, there's not a lot of pressure from the Center for Suicide Prevention. You really can make it what you want with the group. And just depending on what your company culture is, maybe it's a smaller outfit where you can have more engagement and all that stuff. But if you're a larger company, you can really tailor it to whatever environment you have at your company.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mike, for this sort of interview portion. I will briefly hand it back to Seth, who will just run through a few final slides, and then we'll be back for a question and answer period as we sort of try to gather all the questions and consolidate them in a way that we can get to as many as possible. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Blaise. I'm going to put up my screen here again. As Blaise mentioned, before we get to our moderated question and answer, I did just want to first thank everyone for participating today and showing up. Do visit us at buddyup.ca to become a champion. I've actually been getting notifications as we've been talking here of new champions signing up during this call, and some requests for different swag. So that's been great to see the engagement that's been on this call. On here on the right-hand side, you'll see some of our champion organizations that have signed up. And when you go to buddyup.ca, you will see even more. This is what we could fit in the slide, but we're grateful for every single one of them and all of the work that they put in. Here, I just want to put this up. If you have any further questions or comments after today, do reach out to myself or Blaise. Our emails are there. It's seth@suicideinfo.ca or blaise@suicideinfo.ca. Follow us on social media so you can keep up to date with the campaign and what other champions are doing, and then sign up to become a champion if you aren't one yet. We're grateful to have everyone on board. And also, we will send out a post-presentation survey. It just takes a minute or so to fill out, but it will just help inform us of how the presentation went and how we can continue to improve it. for the future. So I want to thank you all for that. I'll take down my screen here, and I think we'll go into the question period. And Blaze, I think you have one to start there.
Yeah, that's right. The first question here is, my workforce is largely male, and I'm not sure how well received talking about suicide, mental health, and feelings will be. Have your employees actually engaged with the campaign? I feel like we already talked about that a little bit, but anything to add there, Mike, or any thoughts that come to mind just now?
Yeah, I think for us, realistically, it was, I was surprised because I didn't hear as much negative impact or feedback as what we had thought, because we had the same concerns when we had done it, because it is quite a serious subject, and it's not necessarily talking so much about feelings and whatnot. I think it's more important just creating an awareness to check in with the guys. If you're in a larger company that's male, like, these guys work with each other a long time. They create a lot of good relationships, and it's important. Like, you don't have to deal with a suicide, because it's going to be really hard on a lot of different people. So just it's not that you can necessarily put a positive spin on suicide prevention, but I think it's just important to create that awareness and just frame it as keeping an eye out for each other, like they do a lot of aspects in safety, just to make sure that their mental health is in a good place.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe just a quick question, comment on that question before I move to the next. So that was definitely a concern that was at the front of our minds as we shaped this campaign. We knew that men are socialized to be more stoic and less likely, at least in broad strokes, to share their feelings. And so that's a key part of that was our diverse majority male advisory committee and focus groups that have been so vital in shaping the campaign. So every idea we had for the campaign was tested through their feedback. So for example, men told us, as Seth was saying, I'm happy to have this conversation maybe with my buddy, but I don't really want to have it be awkward, maybe making eye contact. Could we be doing something else? So things like our air fresheners, even our challenge card, which Seth mentioned there, which gives you ideas for activities you can do. All of that is sort of to try facilitate that in a way that actually gets over that hurdle. So maybe in a sentence, it's sort of just that is the way the campaign was designed, was actually with that concern in mind from the beginning. Now I've just got another question here that's sort of the opposite spectrum, and that is, I'm a woman. Is there a place for me within Buddy Up? And maybe Mike, I'll just take that one quickly. In one word, absolutely. This campaign is about help offering. So we know that 1 in 20 men, 1 in 20 people, the stat is, are at risk of suicide. Specific to the campaign, obviously men we're talking about. We want the other 19 people to feel ready, willing, and able to reach out and be able to offer assistance. So men are surrounded by all sorts of people. Many of their closest relationships may be with women. And so it doesn't really matter who you are. If you want to be able to support the men around you, this campaign is definitely for you. Looks like we've got time for just a few more questions here. And maybe I'll pass it to Seth for just a few sort of logistical questions that have come in here, and then we'll wrap it all up.
Sure. Yeah. So I have one question that came in. How do I get involved in putting up posters? So as you saw on our web, as I mentioned earlier, we have our infographic posters, which are the conversation guide. And then we also have the character posters. And those are available to be ordered as swag from our website. And we've seen individuals put them up in their office spaces. We've seen restaurants put them in their front windows. And so there's lots of different places that you can place them. And it's all based on maybe what fits best for your organization. Really just getting the word out there would be great. There's also a question here that maybe I'll answer real quick about the toolkits and what are the toolkits. So I'll just show you real quick. So there is on our website, there is access to these toolkits. So if you can see this, our website here, when you go become a champion, you're able to get to our toolkit, which covers all these different sections of information. So warning signs, risk and protective factors, recommended readings and such. And then there also is the opportunity to download the toolkit, which shows in this form. And this is also what you can receive when you order it as swag. You'll receive the actual booklet that looks like this. So that's a little overview of what the toolkit is. I think, let's see, I'm just looking at the questions here. All right, and Blaise, did you have any more that you had on doc there?
I've just got one last one maybe that we can close with here, and apologies if we haven't had time to get to your question. Definitely feel free to email us, get in touch, and we'd be happy to take those sort of offline here. But maybe last one for you, Mike, is just as a safety professional, how did you incorporate Buddy Up for the workforce? Did it require corporate support? So a little bit more specific, I am definitely not going to be able to answer that quite as in depth as you are, Mike. Any thoughts on that? Maybe
Sorry, I just missed that last part of the question.
No problem. Let me just make sure I've got it here again. That's right. As a safety professional, how did you incorporate Buddy Up for your workforce? Did it require corporate support?
Work what, sorry?
Your workforce.
Okay.
Did it require corporate support?
Yeah, basically talking to the executive team, it was pretty easy. Obviously, not everybody, or it's a bit of a touchy subject, but again, I think across the board, more people are willing to talk about it in this day and age, especially going through COVID and whatnot recently with everything that's going on. And then just putting information out to our workforce in our, what we call a safety gram, which goes out on a monthly basis to our workforce, introducing that, and then just passing out hard hat stickers, the air fresheners to our workforce, and then just getting guys to talk about it and kind of getting them to buy into it organically, just at the grassroots level, and making sure that they're checking in with each other, I think was the best way that we had done it, and that had the highest success, was just passing out free stuff. Everybody likes the stickers for their hard hats, and getting air fresheners, which are pretty good to have, and getting that message out just made it a very easy transition for us.
Thank you, Mike. And thank you everyone for joining us. I'll just pass it back to Seth here to close.
Perfect. Thanks, Blaise. All right, I just wanted to thank everyone for showing up today and participating. This has been a great session, and really excited for the show up of all the individuals that came today. Like I said, if you do have any questions, do feel free to reach out to Blaise and myself through email. And also we will be sending out a post-presentation survey. So if you have any, if you want to be able to fill that out, that will really help us to be able to improve this presentation for the future. So thank you again, everyone. And it was great to have you all here.